Welcome back. The tailgate continues. Y'all know I am excited and have continued to stay excited throughout this day. It has been a whirlwind of great conversations. So I am just really excited to continue the conversation with my friend Wes Hodge. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How you doing?
I am doing great.
Good.
So listen, first of all, this interview is sponsored by Southern Style Barbecue, who is located at 4890 Edgewater Drive. Y'all make sure y'all check them out. And then sit down, because this is about to be another interesting conversation about leadership.
Yes. I'm ready. Let's go.
So listen, I'm just going to jump right in, Wes,
Okay.
because a lot of voters may be hearing your name for the first time. What is Wes Hodge? Who are you?
Well,
Beyond politics.
Beyond politics, absolutely. Well, so I grew up here. I lived here since 1985. I moved here when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
Went to Lakemont Elementary and Glen Ridge Middle School. Graduated from Winter Park High School.
Okay.
Then I went to Valencia and UCF. Was in real estate for about 15 years or so.
Okay.
And then I got diagnosed with lymphoma. And so I had to go through chemo and radiation. And through that process, I got labeled with pre-existing condition, which meant that I couldn't have health insurance moving forward at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I really got involved. That was also conveniently the same time where we're having conversation around the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. And so I started getting involved and getting engaged because that was the only way for me to have meaningful health care insurance. And so we were making that progress, and I was kind of starting to engage. And then in 2012, I had a recurrence. And so I had to go back to the hospital, and this time I had no insurance. And so fortunately or unfortunately, if you get cancer a second time, Social Security disability will kick in. And so I was able to get on Social Security disability, which then opened the door to Medicaid, and I was able to get my chemo treatments and a bone marrow transplant in 2013. And through that process, I kind of made a commitment that when I got to the other side, I was going to give back to the community. And so after that was done, I really got into the advocacy space, got involved in local government, got involved in making sure that people had a seat at the table.
Yes.
And I grew up here, and I was tired of seeing the developers and the special interests always getting their way, and all we got was more traffic, more sprawl, and nobody was listening to the people. And so I wanted to really get involved and change that. And over the last 13, 14 years, we've been able to make a big difference. Including this gentleman right here, Mayor Jerry Demings. I was very happy when we got him elected in 2018, and have been able to see some real changes in our community.
Wow, I never knew that about you. That is a very amazing story, and I like to say that that's your why.
That's my why.
That is your why. A lot of people are saying, what's his why? I've seen you work and support many other candidates,
Yep.
But to step out and say, this is my why, what was it inside of you that said District 2 is the reason?
Well, I mean, I live there, right? So
Okay.
I live in Lockhart. This is my community.
Okay.
And, moving through this process, I've worked with 3 different county commissioners. I worked with Commissioner Bonilla and then Commissioner Uribe, and most recently Commissioner Martinez Simrad as their chief of staff. And so, through my work, I've met a lot of community groups, and we knew that Commissioner Moore was terming out. She was at her 8 years. And so people started looking around the community for the next commissioner. And so a lot of the community groups came to me and said, we want you to run. Commissioner Martinez Simrad set me down one day and she said, I love you as my chief of staff. And she said, but I want you on the board with me and not working for me. And so all of those conversations and all of those, just people wanting me to do it is kind of what pushed me over the edge. And so I did file in early May, and we collected 1,152 petitions to get onto the ballot in just 7 days, which was crazy.
That's record.
Yeah, and so this is not just me. This is the community and the people behind me, because they want someone that they know will be their voice on that board.
So chief of staff, what was your role? And a lot of people are like, chief of staff, what's that? What are you doing?
Managing chaos.
Okay.
So chief of staff basically is the person that oversees the entire office. So we're talking about policy creation. We're talking about reviewing the county commission agenda to see what the county is spending its money on. Obviously, conversations around the budget, personnel issues, constituent cases. So when you are living in your district and you have an issue, you call your county commissioner's office. It's that staff that answers your questions and gets them answered. So, managing the staff, we have the staff for free, and so managing those people, making sure communication is going out, messaging, everything you think of when you're talking about running a small government office. The chief of staff is the one that makes sure all those wheels are going in the same direction.
So you are plugged into Orange County government already.
Yes.
So to switch over and to be the commissioner now would mean what for you?
It would mean a continuation of what I've already been doing, right?
Okay.
And so, when we're talking about this race with people on their doors, I explain to people, listen, I've already been supporting this position for many years. I know exactly what the county commissioner has to do, and so I'm ready to go day one. And so that's the important conversation we have, the experience. And as we're having so much change, we just voted to go from 6 districts to 8 districts in Orange County. And so we're going to have up to 6 new county commissioners next year. That means that experience is going to be a premium. And so being able to come in day one and be ready to go, I think is very important for the District 2, but also for the residents of Orange County.
What do you think District 2 needs right now?
Ooh.
That's a heavy question.
How
right?
long are we going to get here? Yeah.
Some of the top things that you think District 2 needs.
Absolutely. The biggest issue that District 2 is dealing with is growth. And much like, a lot of Orange County that's not in the central core, we're dealing with a lot of growth.
Okay.
And so that growth comes with traffic, comes with congestion, comes with sprawl. And so we've got to manage that effectively. I'm a big proponent of the rural boundary that the voters of Orange County put into effect in 2024. I'm also a big defender of our rural settlements. So there's 13 rural settlements across Orange County, and we said that in the 1990s, we will maintain the character of these communities. So we're not going to allow big developments, we're not going to allow commercial shopping centers, we're going to keep it as a more rural setting. And so we've seen a lot of developers try to go in there and put projects in that don't match that. And so we've got to defend them from development, but we've also got to stop new development from going out further and further away from downtown Atlanta. I want to work to make sure we're putting new development in towards Orlando, more density, but also partnering it with transportation. So we need bus rapid transit. We need a more reliable and consistent Sunrail. When we put people on these transit corridors, we need to give them transportation options. We can't just build houses and build apartments and build condos and then say, okay, figure it out. We got to partner that with a good transportation plan.
And the transportation plan is one of the things that you've talked about throughout your campaign.
Yes.
What are you ready to jump in and start doing immediately with that?
Immediately. So I am ready to start having the conversation about putting a Sunrail station at the convention center.
Okay.
And one of the things that we need to do is use our hotel tax or our tourist development tax, which is when you stay in a hotel and you pay tax that night on your hotel room, that money goes into a pot for Orange County.
Yes.
And there's very strict laws on how it's used, but one of the allowed uses is at the convention center. So if I put a Sunrail station at the convention center, I can use those dollars to pay for it. And this is not like a small amount of money. We're talking, this fund generates $450 million every year. It's huge. So if I can build that train station and then build a partner station at the airport and connect the two using those tourism dollars, number one, I've increased the transportation options on the tourist corridor, but I've also helped take the county's money out of that equation. And then I can take the county money and spend it in our communities where we have other more important projects going on that don't have the funding right now. So it's a little bit of having tourists pay for itself, but then also freeing up that money to improve our communities.
So when you talk about tourism, you refuse money.
Yeah, I did.
You refuse money from mega developers and tourism.
Yeah.
Why?
Because, again, we go back to what I talked about earlier. I feel like for too long, the mega developments and the tourism have gotten whatever they wanted. And I'm not trying to say that they're bad. They serve a purpose in our community. Tourism is one of our largest employers. We need them to survive. But the thing is, they shouldn't get everything they want. And so what I want to see is a balance. And so I want to see, we have 250,000 tourists here every single day. They use our roads. They don't pay for that. They pay gas tax when they fill up their rental cars. We're the number 2 county in the state when it comes to generating gas sales tax. We're the number 5th when it comes to distribution because we don't get credit for all those tourists. So I want to make sure that we're getting our fair share of that money back. But I also want to make sure that tourism is paying its fair share as well, because for too long we've been burdening that as Orange County residents, and tourism hasn't contributed. I'm not asking for anything that's not unfair. I'm just asking that they make sure they contribute as well. And so by expanding Sunrail, by expanding the transportation infrastructure along the tourism corridor, number one, we improve the tourist experience, so they're more likely to come back and spend more money. But we have tourism paying for it, and we're no longer subsidizing those residents. And development is the same thing. I want to see full impact fees on the developments, because as we're growing these projects, they need to pay their fair share. It's not fair for you and I as taxpayers to pay for somebody else's development project that they're making money off of. Just pay your fair share.
Do you feel like candidates that have taken that money can be persuaded to do what they want them to do?
I think we have probably about 40 years of uncontrolled growth in the county that speak to that. Okay. I mean, I won't name anybody individually, but I see. We're not going to name any names, but I sure see all these developments popping up, and there seems to be very little restrictions as to what they can do. Okay. So it kind of speaks for itself.
Do you feel like there are campaign promises being made in this race that sounds good but aren't really realistic once you understand what the county commissioner, does?
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I will say this, and I've said this before. There are 5 people in this race. Every single person in this race is a good person. I've known them for many years. We've worked together on many things. They have their own skill sets. They don't necessarily translate to the county commission. And so when I'm hearing people talking about, I'm going to bring more funding to this community, well, that sounds good, right? Like, I want to bring money to a COE. I want to bring money to a POPCA. Yeah, that's great. But that means that you're taking money from somebody else. Because it's not like there's this gigantic pot of money that Orange County's sitting on, and we're just not giving it out to people. There's a very finite budget, and that money is being spent and allocated appropriately. Can we invest some TDT dollars in a POPCA and a COE? Absolutely. But to say that, I'm going to bring more county dollars to a COE because I just want to see more money going to a COE. Well, you're not answering where that's coming from. And so it's kind of hard to just make that promise without knowing who are you going to shortchange to get that.
Who's going to shortchange to get it?
Exactly.
Very interesting. When voters hear the word experience, what should they actually be looking for beyond the title? Because a lot of people say we're experienced. What is experience in this position?
Right. So experience is my 6 years serving on the Board of Zoning Adjustment, making decisions about, which projects are going where, making sure that we approve projects that were consistent and compatible with the surrounding communities. That's a track record that I'm very proud of, and we didn't always say yes. We said no to projects that didn't meet, the surrounding community. Not many people in this race have that record to stand on. The other thing is working with that county budget. An $8.3 billion budget is huge. And it takes a long time to develop that budget. Going back to what you said earlier, someone in a candidate forum was saying, "Oh yeah, they start developing a budget in June." I'm like, no. The budget development starts back in November. Like, as soon as we pass the new budget, we're already starting on the next one. So it's a very, very long process. And if you're having conversations in June, July, August, you're way too late. And so we've got to get in at the ground level on these budgets starting in October and November, meeting with department heads, meeting with managers to have the conversation about, I need to see a deep dive on these projects. I need to see, are these effective programs that we're funding? And if they're not, then let's cut that funding and let's put it to other programs that are more effective. But experience is knowing, when that happens, knowing who to have the conversations with, and understanding exactly how, if I want to get money for a program, if I want to get money for a project, who do I need to talk to? How do I need to navigate that building to find the money that I need to make something happen?
money seems to always be the topic when it comes down. How has fundraising been for you? And do you feel like the person that brings in the most money has a cleaner shot?
No, I mean, I would love to. Okay, so first, how's fundraising been for me? Well, we are at $25,000-$30,000 for fundraising right now, which is about on par with most everybody else. One candidate funded themselves $50,000, which good on them. And the other candidate has brought in about $50,000 also, but a lot of it has come from outside of our community. And so that's one of my big concerns. When I look at my fundraising, every dollar I've raised has come from within 10 miles of this district. And so these are the local people investing in local leadership. I am concerned when I see a lot of money coming into our race out of Miami. What does Miami want out of Orange County? That concerns me. But no, I mean, I've been involved with plenty of races where we've been outspent, 3-1, 15-1, 30-1, and still won. And so money is always helpful, and it's good to help get that message out. And we've been very good at, bootstrapping with what we had to get our message out. We've already knocked on 11,000 doors. We've got 3 pieces of mail out. We've got a robust digital campaign going. Text messages, emails, social media ads, a whole 9 yards. So I don't feel like we're lacking anything. Obviously, I'd love more money, but no, I feel like we're doing really good. And like I said, I've been involved as the underdog many times when it comes to fundraising, and it doesn't intimidate me.
Hey, so if a candidate, and we're naming no names, already has a voting record from another public office, what should voters examine before assuming that automatically makes them qualified for county commission?
Well, it depends on what that voting record is, right? And so, a state record is great, but it's completely different than a local record. State record, you're voting on state laws, you're voting on regulations, you're voting on a different set of issues and concerns, and you're setting policy for the whole state. When you get to more of a city level or a county level, now we're talking about land use, we're talking about resolutions, policies, things like that really kind of affect the day-to-day lives. And that's where you could get a better example of kind of an apples-to-apples comparison of how somebody would go.
Are there any records or decisions in this race that you believe voters should be looking more closely at?
I think land use is important, and I think that, when we're talking about preserving the rural boundary, we're talking about preserving our rural settlements, we need to look at how people have voted in the past on conservation easements, on protected lands, making sure that what you're saying matches what you've done in the past. And so, even though I've not been elected, my service on the Board of Zoning Adjustment does provide a 6-year voting record on projects that have been in rural zoning, projects that have been, trying to convert certain things in protected areas, and we've been able to spend up to it. So, always look at the land use. That's a very important one.
Does knowing how government works, when we talk about all of this, makes you better prepared to change it, or does it risk making you be a part of the system?
No, I think you have to understand the system in order to change the system. And I think, I've seen this too many times where people come from outside, not understanding how it works, and then get frustrated because they can't do anything, and then they're not effective. And so part of this process and part of working for the county has taught me, okay, these are the wheels that need to move. These are the people that move those wheels. These are the conversations that I need to have. These are the relationships I need to have to make things happen. There are 6, but now 8 county commissioners that are going to be vying for projects for the community, and rightfully so. The question is how do you show that this project should have priority over another project? And knowing who to go talk to have those conversations. Part of this is being part of Metro Plan, which is the regional transit coordination for all of Central Florida. Those relationships are important because that's where the Florida Department of Transportation is. You know, and if we need state funding, having that conversation, how do we bring some state funds down? How can we use county funds to push a state project up the list? You know, I don't want to give away all the trade secrets,
Right,
but,
right.
but
I guess
you
these
know,
questions is making you give some trade secrets.
it's all right. But you know, knowing how that process works and who you need to talk to move things around, that's where the experience comes in. And being on the inside and knowing that is what is a competitive advantage.
So what's the draw line between responsible development and overdevelopment? Because I've heard both of those.
Right.
I'm like, hey, we're either underdeveloped or overdeveloped.
Right.
What's that draw line for you?
So for me, it's the rural boundary.
Okay.
You know, we as voters, 73% of us voted to implement the rural boundary in 2024. So that is a line where if you're going outside of that, you've got to be consistent with the existing policy. Now, every owner can make a case as to why they think they meet those criteria, and we'll have to hear them on a case-by-case basis. But development should happen inside the urban service area, on transportation infrastructure, on transit thoroughways where we already have existing transportation corridors. That was the word I was looking for. I got stuck. You know, on transit corridors. And then looking for infill projects. So now what I'm looking at is if there's a home that's no longer, you know, viable or has been condemned, maybe we put a duplex there, and not like a traditional duplex, but something that looks good, something that looks like it fits in the community, but increasing that density that's consistent and compatible with the community, so that we can get that development further in towards the urban core, where those existing infrastructure and all of that is already. The goal is to provide bus rapid transit, Sunrail, on a consistent basis so that people that are moving here and are continuing to move here aren't just coming here and using their cars.
Okay. So when a major developer comes to you, and I want you to kind of look over there because they're watching, okay?
Yeah.
So when a major developer comes to you asking you for approval, what questions are you going to ask them?
Well, hi, thanks for watching. You know, first question is, where are we looking to put this? You know, and is it somewhere where we can make this project work?
Okay.
And if we're looking at extending the urban service area, if we're looking at going into our agricultural land, then we're going to have a hard conversation. You know, what I want to have the conversation is, let's look inside, you know, our urban service area. Let's identify some parcels where we can work together. What can we do as a county to help incentivize that development? And I understand, you know, on existing redevelopment, it's hard because you don't know what's underneath the ground, you don't know what you're inheriting. And we've had these conversations with developers before. But if we can find a way to make it work, then I'm all for it. And that's the kind of conversations that we have to have. You know, we're going to continue growing, but I think that we can do it in a smart way. I was at a Real Estate Land Institute meeting probably about 5 or 6 months ago, and one of the developers stood up and said, I can build all the housing you need for the next 100 years within 5 miles of where we are right now. And that's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah. And so the thing is how do we make that happen? And how do we put the policies in place to encourage that to happen? So that we take the pressure off of our agricultural land, we take the pressure off of our natural resources, and we stop creating more sidewalks, more streets, and more stormwater infrastructure that we have to pay for in the future.
What's your thoughts on affordability with housing as a new developer comes?
All right, hold on. How much time we got? Let's see. What we got here?
How much time we got?
Yeah. Affordability. I mean, we're in a housing crisis, right? And so we need housing not only below market average, at market rate, and luxury. We need all three at the same time.
Yes.
And so we've got to work and get the supply increase at all three levels.
Okay.
One of the things that's a little outside for me is that I want to see us using county-owned land for housing.
Okay.
The county has not owned housing in decades, and I want to see that come to an end. Part of it is when we're redeveloping these things, you know, we can actually use the county-owned land and put the buildings on it. And when you remove the cost of the land, that's a big component of a lot of these housing costs.
Yes.
And so if I can use that to make housing more affordable, I'm all for it. And then I would love to see a program where in county housing, you're only there for 4 or 5 years. I don't want it to be enabling. What I want it to be, you're in a program. We provide financial literacy courses while you're there. We provide you with the tools that you need to be successful. And a portion of your rent over those 4 or 5 years has been put into an escrow account. And then when you're done, you have your down payment for a house, if that's what you want. And if you don't want to be a homeowner, you have your first month, last month, a security deposit for an apartment. But the thing is that we've been able to utilize that housing to put you in a better position moving forward.
Yeah, I think, I've gotten questions about this, is when people say affordable housing becomes just handouts.
Right.
So I really like what you were saying as far as, creating an escrow account, giving them some education, so they're in a stronger position when it's time for them to vacate.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the thing is, like I said, there's a line between assistance and enablement.
Right.
And we want to make sure that we're assisting people when they need it the most, because that is essential. But we also don't want to be enabling.
Yes.
So that's where we got to get.
So what is your greatest strength as a candidate? Greatest strength?
Listening to people. I thoroughly enjoy, I was talking to Miss Janet that was here earlier, I love nothing more than going to knock on doors and talking to people and saying, what's going on in your neighborhood, how can I help you?
Okay.
I have filed more 311 reports over the last 2.5, 3 months than probably anybody else in this county, because I'm out walking and I see a sidewalk that needs to be fixed, or I see a tree that is overgrown on the road, or I see a lawn that's out of needs to be cleaned up. Helping people fix the problems in their neighborhoods as we're out talking to them. That's what I love doing, and I think that is probably my greatest strength, is that I'm not showing up telling you what I'm about. I'm listening to what your needs are.
Okay, what does another candidate need to have before you would even consider them prepared for this job?
The experience and the track record.
Okay.
To show that you are, you're familiar with how the Orange County government works, and that you have stood up to developers and you have stood up to special interests and fought for what our community needs, not what the people with the money want.
That's important.
Yeah.
What does Wes Hodge have that nobody else in this race brings?
A wonderful disposition and a charming attitude. No, I think we kind of touched on it. The experience and the commitment to put the people first,
Okay.
and making sure that our decision is framed in what's best for our community, not what is best for a specific project or a specific entity or a specific person. Just making sure that our community benefits from the actions that we're taking.
So, in closing, and I think this is so awesome, because I got to hear so much about you that I didn't know was there. So I only can imagine our friends that are watching, pay attention. Definitely go to his website, learn more information. A lot of times when I interview candidates, they tell me why they're the good candidate. But what I want you to do is I want you to tell District 2 voters what they risk if they choose the wrong candidate.
Yeah.
What do they risk? What can happen to this district if you choose someone with no experience, or you choose someone that's not hardened and ground like you've expressed to us today? What can happen?
Well, the biggest thing is the sprawl will continue, right? And so part of making sure that we're defending our community is standing up for these rural boundaries, standing up for these rural communities. Developers are coming, and they're every 2 weeks we see they're putting in requests for applications. They're putting in these submissions where they want to pave our community over. And we have to have a strong county commissioner that's going to stand up and say no. Next year we're going to have a conversation about Visit Orlando and the tourist development tax contract. We have got to have a strong commissioner that's going to stand up for Visit Orlando and say, listen, we appreciate what you're doing, but you don't need $120 million to promote Orlando. Let's cut that down, and then let's take a portion of that and improve our transportation infrastructure to improve the tourist experience. Those are the hard decisions. Those are the ones that the people want, but special interests don't want. And we've got to make sure that we've got someone that's going to fight for the people. For far too long, we've had special interests and developers get what they wanted, and we've all had to suffer. And so It's time for us to make sure that we're listening, we're doing what the community needs, and we're standing up for the people.
Listen, and you all heard it right here from Wes himself. August 18th, cast your vote, get informed, and again, thank you all. Any last words before we close out? You got the people.
Yeah, last words. Hey, go visit my website, weshodgeoc.com. It's Wes Hodge OC on all the social medias. Fundraising deadline is Thursday. If you want to throw in 10, 20 bucks and you like what you hear, we would greatly appreciate it. That helps us just reach more voters in these closing days. But thank you for the time, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you all for watching. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Listen, y'all, stay connected, okay? Because the tailgate continues. Again, we are here today. We are sponsored strictly by Southern Style Barbecue that is located on 4890 Edgewater Drive. Y'all check them out. They are open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Listen, stay tuned. Follow IBA Success Magazine. Follow Wes, okay? And we'll see you soon.